How did you determine that competition increases efficiency?
The research that was conducted was to look at the statistical estimated relationship between the spending that a district will do, the performance of the students in that district, and measures of the factors that drive differences in the cost of education, namely student demographics, labor costs, economies of scale. Basically, we're trying to explain the level of spending in the district as a function of what it's accomplishing, what kind of kids it's working with, what's its size, what's its labor cost look like. And there's a piece left over of spending that cannot be explained, but it is correlated with the extent of the competition in the community. That's really important for everyone to recognize that competition in the economic concept here includes traditional district on traditional district competition. That in Plano is competition for Richardson. That Highland Park is competition for Dallas. That there is a lot of choice in Texas that has absolutely nothing to do with charter schools. It has to do with the fact that we have a lot of our major metropolitan areas who have enormous numbers of traditional public schools that if you don't like the way the school board is making decisions in a Plano, you can make a move to another district and find a combination that better suits you. And it's that kind.
How did you distinguish between the economies of scale in urban areas, which leads to efficiency, versus rural areas and the effects of varied educational opportunities? Competition.
The work that I was talking about is coming out of a report on school district consolidation that it's available on the TDA website. They for the analysis work. And basically what we were looking at is the extent to which spending is higher for smaller districts than for others, controlling for characteristics like the extent to which you have various choices in the community. And what we really found was it's all driven, or heavily driven, by school size. And school size differs across the state in that the sparsely populated parts of the state have smaller schools because they have smaller towns.
All right, Dr. Taylor, you're popular. Is recapture required to go back to schools, or can it go to general revenue for other state needs?
Because there is recapture, the state doesn't have to provide funding for equalization. But formally, every recaptured dollar under law gets earmarked to go through the education system. The problem is that when you have that kind of situation, then the legislature is in a position of being able to reduce what it contributes to equalization in the school. And the second part was the bucket analysis that Chandra was talking about, which is that the way the funding formula works, the foundation tier one part of the formula, is that when you have local growth, whether it's growth in a Chapter 41 district or a Chapter 42 recipient district, when you have local growth, the state is the beneficiary of growth in the local tax base. The tax base goes up, the state's contribution goes down.
Right, and recapture is such a small part of overall school funding. A lot of people think that any state aid that districts get comes from recapture, but it's only, about 4% of overall state and local funding. So it's a teeny tiny slice of a very large pie. So when states, fill up other districts' bucket, very, pennies come from recapture. It's really general revenue, sales tax, that kind of stuff, and then there's a couple other funds, but that's kind of weedy.
Currently, 38% of state funding goes to schools. Back in the 70s, what was that percentage? And what does your organization recommend that it should be?
Most people don't go back as far as the 70s. Most people only look to about 84, 85, because that's when we got our kind of modern school finance system that we have today. And I just pulled that for somebody the other day, and I can't remember off the top of my head, but I think it was closer to a 50-50 split back then in 84 when they first kind of set up the school finance system. And even that was before recapture and stuff. We didn't get recapture till 93, but 84 is kind of the creation of our modern school finance system. And it has kind of gone up and down depending on sort of state involvement. It had gotten really low before the 2006 lawsuit that we had a statewide property tax, and then the state brought down local tax rates and put in more money, and that got us back up to a 50-50 split. So there's definitely things that the state can do, but I caution people against focusing too much on the percentages, because we could get to a 50-50 split by cutting school funding. You could just cut, the local share down and not bring the state share up and end up with a cut. So just saying, an arbitrary 50-50 split, you got to think more about what you're trying to achieve. You want to bring down lower taxes and have the state come up. You only want low property taxes to come down. But I think, what we really need to do is just figure out how much it costs to provide a high quality education and come up, and that's probably going to cost a lot if we don't put a lot of money into our schools, and come up with a plan to kind of get to those adequacy targets. And, but there are a lot of things that the state can do with, increasing the basic allotment. We can buy down tax rates. So there's a lot of options, but you have to look at how do they impact equity. Is everybody treated fairly? There's a lot of things that the state could do to kind of bring up its share. And we could even move to a statewide property tax and be completely state funded for all our schools. We would not need recapture. That doesn't mean we'd have more money for our schools. It depends on where they set the tax rates and stuff. So there's a lot of ways that you can kind of maneuver around that. But basically, statute says that the state is supposed to provide a substantial share of public school funding. And I don't define 38% as a substantial share. And so the legislature really needs to think about what does that mean. They put it in writing that they want to be, that it is their responsibility to provide a substantial share. And if that substantial share is 50%, if it's more than 50%, the legislature needs to figure out what they're aiming for and how to maintain their level of investment instead of letting the system just kind of run its course how it is with rising property values and declining state share.
Rena, if we did not have the state requirement for statewide tests and the number of end-of-course tests and what subjects, could we just get around all of the testing and use ACT, SAT tests?
I think there has to be some kind of progression shown. I can tell you when I was in school, it was the ITBS. We did that. Teachers were allowed to use that as a guiding force to how students needed to come up or to expand. But I can tell you the dollars that are paid to the testing companies, to the developers, to all of that, if those dollars were in our schools where our teachers could actually teach content and processes, I truly believe our schools would be a lot better off. That takes a huge amount of dollars. They are profiteering from it, and our kids are being taught to bubble in sheets. We are going to have a great generation of bubblers, but when you ask them to work together, to think collaboratively, many can, but there are many that are just getting the very basics of test taking to where they can't transition the information into other areas. It's isolated because of the testing. So if teachers could actually teach the content and help them to apply it in applicable everyday ways, I think we'd see greater achievement.
Why are the taxpayers responsible for bailing out DISD when they are not doing the best job in spending the funds they already have? Well, Trustee Foreman, that sounds like a question for you.
Actually, Rena passed the mic to me and said, that's your question. is not an equitable system in terms of funding the schools. And so they consistently come back to the taxpayers. I am not for raising taxes on taxpayers to pay any additional money to the district. What I am focused on is making sure that the district uses the dollars that it has in the best possible way that they can. We can't say that they're not doing a good job. When you go from 43 to 4, that is an indication that some good things are happening. Could we get better? Of course we could. Could we spend more wisely? Of course we could. And then I'll leave with this. It's too many outside people trying to tell the district how to spend their money.
Where is the rainy day fund in this funding issue?
The district does have a rainy day fund, but we've used it sometimes unwisely. The new headquarters that we have on Central Expressway, which is not convenient to the parents. Most of the parents live on this side of town. It's not convenient. We paid $47 million cash from the rainy day fund. This trustee voted against that. There's about $170 million in the rainy day fund right now, but as we continue to use it to prop us up on other issues, it's going to continue to dwindle. Now, what the superintendent has said is that if there's a tax ratification election, that a large portion of the dollars would go into the rainy day fund. But that's only to pay recapture. And so we're really not actually building the rainy day fund. And basically what they say is that the rainy day fund should be at the level of funding the district for 2 months.
I'm just going to interject. I just learned recently the state rainy day fund is replenished every year, because it's the money from the gas and oil taxes that go in there. The people that decide where that money go, there are 3. Our governor, lieutenant governor, and speaker of the House are the 3 that can determine where the rainy day fund money goes.
And just in the interest of the kind of statewide perspective, there's no guarantee that the rainy day fund will be spent on any particular function of government. So the rainy day funds can be spent on Hurricane Harvey relief if they wanted to, but they didn't. Or you can spend it on education. The green eye shade economist in me says that the rainy day fund is for one-time expenses to get us through the rainy day, not the rainy week, rainy year, rainy month fund. And so we should be very careful whenever anyone is talking to us about recurring expenses financed by a rainy day fund, because that is not the purpose of a rainy day fund. A rainy day fund exists to smooth the revenues and the expenditures over the budget cycle so that the state is never in a situation of having to raise taxes in an economic downturn.
Yes, ma'am.
With the increased participation in recapture, does this come from what are usually currently or is missed from anticipated growth in violations? What happens in case of recession or a crash in housing values, such as we saw in 2008?
I don't know the full answer to that, but let me try to go back and talk again about how recapture is calculated. Because that's the important thing. We are having fewer students, receiving more revenue. So the more revenue you receive with fewer students and the allocation for the state, it goes down. And so that money goes back to the state. I talked about the state's allocation is $5,100 per student, and when you do the calculations, if it's if we have 55, the state takes that money back because they say that's not your money. And so that's why we end up that way. Now, if we have a recession, as we did in the 80s, the late 80s or 2008, okay, so it seems much further away than that. But if we have a recession, your schools are going to be in trouble. Because one of the things about Dallas ISD is we know it's a high needs district. We have a lot of poor children that need a lot. I mean, they need a lot. And so if we have some kind of recession, then we're going to be in a lot of trouble.
Is your comparison of school spending leaving out transportation costs?
Yes.
Okay, and how does the state measure and compare the districts? And does this figure in the 8th through F grading for districts?
Does this, as in transportation costs, bear?
Yes.
No.
But the comparison to the district that are effectively connected or not.
Yeah, no, the districts are cost effective has nothing to do with the A through F formula. The A through F formula is looking at a number of metrics of performance and no real controls for resourcing.